Thank you for that very warm welcome. Please take your seats. Loving greetings to all of you here in the Bonaventure Hotel and the thousands who are joining us from all over the world via live stream. Welcome. We're very happy to have you with us for this special week of convocation. I think we can all feel a distinct increase in the spiritual vibrations of divine love and divine joy. Don't you all feel that? I mean, looking at your faces, I am getting inspired. You know, in India this year, they celebrated or organized the Kumbh Mela. And maybe some of you participated in that event, where millions of pilgrims from all over the world gathered for several weeks of spiritual activities. But for SRF, YSS members and friends, the SRF World Convocation is our Kumbh Mela. So like Brahmachari Shivain mentioned, the topic for our class this evening is manifesting your noble ambitions, the creative power of initiative. And I'm sure there are many self-help books on this topic and perhaps workshops and so forth that are available for those who are interested. But tonight, I'm going to share with you what our Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda, says about this God-given power of initiative. He defines initiative as follows. To have initiative is to possess the power of original conception, the power to create something that no one else has ever created. It means to try to do things in new ways. Everyone is born with this God-given power, but few use it or try to develop it. The person with initiative is like a shooting star. He or she creates something from nothing and makes the impossible possible by the great inventive power of spirit. It's a beautiful definition. I would like to begin our class by sharing a true story. This happened many years ago. There was a very impoverished, poor, illiterate man by the name of Dashrath Majhi in a small, remote village of India. Majhi was a day laborer. He worked in the fields during the day, barely meeting his ends. He had a wife, a couple of small children. The entire village was very backward. It was almost as if time had stopped. The rest of the country was making strides in material development, but this village had just stopped in time. It seemed like it was so remote that no one really made an effort to bring up the conditions there. So one day when Majhi was working in the fields, his wife was carrying, as she usually did, some food for him for lunch. So she was carrying a bundle of food and some water. And as she was walking this very mountainous terrain of this village, she accidentally slipped and fell to the bottom of the cliff. Now Majhi got there with another villager, and they carried her on foot to the nearest hospital, which was 35 miles away. Because the village was so mountainous, you had to walk all across the boundary of the mountain to get to the hospital. Now, unfortunately, the wife's life could not be saved. Majhi was understandably very upset, very enraged, because he felt that the life of his beloved wife could have been saved if the path to the hospital was not so long. Right then and there, he made up his mind to carve a path through the mountain ridge so that the villagers could have access to medical care in a timely manner. So using a hammer and chisel, he started working. Now, his family and friends thought he had gone mad. I mean, this is a big boulder, I mean, huge. You can't just chisel it with your hammer and with a hammer and chisel. Many people called him a lunatic, but it only increased his resolve. He worked day after day, month after month, year after year. He plowed the fields during the day to make a living, and he worked on this project at night. He would burn firewood near the rocks and then splash them with cold water, and then using his chisel, he would chip off the cracked boulders. From 1960 until 1982, 22 years, he worked on this project. In the beginning, he had no support from anyone. Like I said, they called him a lunatic. But little by little, seeing his resolve, some of the villagers gradually started helping him. They provided him food and bought him some basic tools. But literally, single-handedly, in 22 years, he carved a path through that mountain ridge, reducing the commute from his village to that hospital from 35 miles to 10 miles. With the assurance that people could get timely help and that no one was in the danger of dying by falling down the steep cliff sides walking to the medical facility. Later on, the path was actually paved so that vehicles could go through. And that path is actually named after him. He was given the title of Parvat Purush in Hindi, which means mountain man. And that path is called Dashrath Majhi Path. Would you like to see a picture of this man? So I have a very poor quality image. So let's please put up that on the screen. So he is the gentleman in the white clothes, and that is a path he carved through that mountain ridge. It took him 22 years. He had no support from the government, no support from anyone else. Let's go to the next picture, please. That shows how it looks when it's paved now. You can take it off the screen. So he passed away in the year 2007, and the state of Bihar, where he lived, gave him a full state funeral when he died. In 2016, the Indian Postal Department released a stamp in his honor, and at least one full-length feature film has been made and a documentary has been produced about his life. Remarkable, isn't it? What are the lessons we can learn from this man's life? Majhi was illiterate. He had none of the privileges that most of us enjoy. He had no education, no money, no access to resources, no support from anyone. And yet, he literally moved a mountain. Now, I purposely chose this story rather than some famous scientist or social reformer or business person or a sports person, because it can be easy for us to feel that those people were privileged. They were born with certain skills and talents and abilities. And so they can do it, but I can't do it. But Majhi's life proves that everyone, no matter what their station in life, can use the God-given power of initiative. We don't have to be gifted. We don't have to be special in any way. If we have zeal, determination, and self-belief, and prepared to withstand the negative opinions of the world, knowing in our heart that what we want is right, we can do anything like he did. Nothing can stand in our way, not even a mountain. Listen to what Paramahansaji says. If your faith is strong enough and there is something you desire which does not exist, it will be created for you and through you. Be untiring in your zeal. Disregard the negative opinions of the world, and with unflinching steadiness, march on your path, believing that the infinite creative power is behind you. Paramahansaji tells us that there are 3 grades of initiative. The first is to improve on what someone else has done. Examples of that could be improving someone else's recipe, or improving on your neighbor's garden landscape by using more diverse set of plants, or improving a friend's home decor by using more creative furniture, storage elements that save space, and so on and so forth. So that's the first kind of initiative, first grade of initiative, where we improve on someone else's idea. Second grade of initiative, Guruji says, is to write or to invent something but of no particular significance. Actually, this can be very creative. For example, one could write poetry, right? With no intention of publishing it, but just to share with some friends or family, or write a fictional story. Again, with no intention of publishing it, but just for yourself to express creativity. Or someone can invent a tiny gadget like a smartphone stand for your personal use, or a unique bookmark that you can use for yourself. Right? These are all creative endeavors. So that's a second kind of initiative, where we write or invent something but of no particular significance for the world at large. The third grade of initiative, Guruji says, is the best and the most extraordinary kind of initiative, which makes one stand out before the world like a blazing flame. And we all know of individuals who have done that. And I'm going to share a couple of examples. I'm not going to point out any specific individuals, but just initiatives that have transformed the world at large. The first one is 18 years ago when the iPhone came out on the market. Transformed the world. Can any one of us imagine a world without smartphones, for better or for worse? We can't even think of what life was like. By combining a phone, an internet browser, a GPS, a music player, with an intuitive touch interface, with a robust app ecosystem, it transformed the way we communicate and live in this world. That's an innovation that stands before the world like a blazing flame, like Guruji says. The second example is ride-sharing services. Companies like Uber and Lyft and Ola and many others transformed the taxi industry by making a mobile app-based system for connecting drivers and riders. This innovation proved to be very economical for most riders. It made it very convenient and completely transformed the taxi industry. The third example I'm going to give you is that of our own Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda. Guruji came to the West, as we know, as a young man of 27 in 1920. And in a matter of 32 years, he had established Self-Realization Fellowship for the ages. He used the innovative method of sharing, of disseminating ancient God-knowing science, the Raja Yoga techniques of meditation, and the How to Live teachings, using the innovative methods of delivering it to your doorstep, of home delivery. No one had done that before him. And thanks to that innovation that he pioneered, you and I are the beneficiaries today, and apart from us, thousands and thousands all over the world whose lives have been transformed. So three grades of initiative. The first is to improve on what someone else has done. Second is to write or invent something that is of no particular significance. And third is the best and the most extraordinary kind of initiative that stands out before the world like a blazing flame. So how to develop initiative? So I combed through Guruji's teachings, and he has written quite a bit about this subject. And I tried to distill it for myself and for all of us. The three essential guiding principles or practices that he gives us for developing initiative. First, by wisdom, by right training, and by practice of self-realization teachings. That's one. By wisdom, by right training, and by practice of self-realization teaching. So let's take each of those in turn. So I'm going to call it 1A, 1B, 1C. Okay, so 1A is wisdom. What is wisdom? Wisdom is the ability to make decisions and take actions based on one's knowledge and experience. In other words, wisdom is the ability to use what one knows and what one has experienced to navigate life's complexities effectively. That is wisdom. And there is a difference between knowledge and wisdom. What is the difference? Knowledge is knowing that tomato, or tomato as they call it in some parts of the world, is a fruit. Wisdom is not putting it in a fruit salad. Another example, knowledge is knowing how to use a fire extinguisher. Wisdom is checking it to make sure it's filled before you need to use it. So having wisdom helps us to make the right choices. I think we can appreciate why Guruji has given us this principle of wisdom for developing initiative. Because if we have wisdom, we will pick the right initiatives to work on. Without wisdom, we may make bad decisions and waste our time and energy on something that is not really of the highest benefit for us and the world. So that was 1A, wisdom. 1B is right training. Right training is essential if we want to be really successful in some initiative. I think it should be very obvious. For example, if a scientist is determined to find a cure for a rare disease, that individual has to go through many years of rigorous medical training before they can be ready to even start experimenting and discovering possible cures. Now, even without right training, someone can possibly be successful in a particular initiative just by sheer hard work and determination and zeal. But that effort would be so much more enjoyable and easier if the person had the right training. And this applies to any line of work, whether it's business or science or sports or arts, anything, right? If you have the right training, you can be much more successful in what you do. So that was 1B, right training. 1C is practice of the self-realization teachings. Now, I don't think that Guruji necessarily meant by this, the SRF and YSS teachings only, because obviously in the world there are going to be many, many people who will not be practicing these teachings. I think he meant any true spiritual teaching that will elevate one's consciousness. But for our discussion tonight, I'm just obviously going to focus on the SRF YSS teachings, so the practice of the self-realization teachings. Now, of course, the main purpose of the SRF YSS teachings is to help us attain self-realization, to help us attain our oneness with God. That is the main purpose. But regular and correct practice of the meditation techniques and the How to Live teachings that Guruji has given us helps us to cultivate many wonderful qualities, such as concentration, calmness, wisdom, discrimination, intuition, understanding, self-control, and the list goes on. When we have some degree of mastery in a few or all of these qualities, the stage is set for success, no matter what the endeavor may be. It propels us towards success. Listen to what Guruji has to say in the lesson on the Hong Sau technique of concentration, lesson number 4 in the new series. He says, those who attain even a small degree of success in one pointing the mind during the practice of Hong Sau find their ability to concentrate on the various duties and problems of the day immensely increased. Even a small degree of success in one pointing the mind, half a minute, 1 minute, if we can keep the mind focused on the technique, he says it will lead to an immense increase in our ability to concentrate on the various duties and problems of life. The scientific techniques taught by our Guru in these lessons help us to enhance our concentration and mental abilities, helping us to carry on our day-to-day work and initiatives that we're working on with greater effectiveness and a greater sense of joy. You know, when we attune ourselves with God by meditation, we are opening the channel between us and the infinite source of wisdom and inspiration, which will propel us to success in any line of activity. So that was 1C. So again, 1A was wisdom, 1B was right training, and the 1C is the practice of the self-realization teachings. So let's go to number 2. This is asking for God's guidance and inspiration. In my opinion, this is where most of the world doesn't know that this is a very powerful principle that if they apply, they could be much more successful in whatever they are doing. Most people depend on their own abilities and skills to accomplish. But if we ask for God's guidance and inspiration, it's a leverage that increases our success manifold. So again, I've broken this particular principle down into 3 things. So 2A is first contact God and ask Him to guide, inspire, and lead us. First contact God by meditation and ask Him to guide, inspire, and lead us. I have been personally very inspired by the life of Dr. George Washington Carver, who was a famous African-American scientist who transformed the agriculture of the American South in the 1900s. He discovered 300 uses of the peanut. I didn't even know that peanuts could be used in so many ways. And 150 uses for the sweet potato, among many, many other discoveries. And he was a man of God. He derived his inspiration and guidance from God. A beautiful article about him appeared in the Self-Realization magazine some years ago called The Man Who Talks with the Flowers. And I believe there's a book by that same title on his life. I want to read to you an excerpt about what he said, about his method. He said, "There is literally nothing that I ever wanted to do that I asked the blessed Creator to help me to do that I have not been able to accomplish." In other words, whenever he asked God to help him with something, he was successful in that endeavor. He goes on to say, "It is all very simple if one knows how to talk with the Creator. It is simply seeking the Lord and finding Him. All my life, I have risen regularly at 4 o'clock and have gone into the woods and talked with God. There He gives me my orders for the day." Imagine, this is a scientist. Someone once asked him, "Could you describe to us your methods when you meet a problem?" And he replied, "I never grope for methods. The method is revealed the moment I am inspired to create something new. I live in the woods, I gather specimens and listen to what God has to say to me. After my morning's talk with God, I go into my laboratory and begin to carry out His wishes for the day." This is exactly what our Guru teaches us to do. He said, whenever you want to create something wonderful, sit quietly and go deep in meditation until you have contacted that infinite, inventive, creative power that is within you. Now, after contacting God, we have to do our part. We can't say, "God, do it for me." But we can say, "Lord, I want to do it, but you guide me, you inspire me, you lead me." And Guruji has this beautiful prayer that we begin every meeting in the ashram with. "Heavenly Father, I will reason, I will, and I will act, but guide Thou my reason, will, and activity to the right thing that I should do." You see, when we ask God for help, Guruji says God is very shy. He says he has an inferiority complex. And God doesn't want to impose Himself on our will. But the moment we ask, He says, "I am here to help you." So that was 1A. First, contact God in meditation and ask Him to guide and inspire and lead you. 2B is act rightly to please God and to benefit His children. Act rightly to please God and to benefit His children. Guruji said, so long as you work to please God, all cosmic forces will harmoniously assist you. Think of that for a moment. So long as you work to please God, all cosmic forces will harmoniously assist you. No matter what we may be doing, it could be setting up the flowers, sweeping the gardens, or something, in the office. We can do it with the consciousness that we are offering it to God as a devotional offering. We are doing it for God, with God, to please God. It's all a state of consciousness. It's not what we do, but where our mind is, where our consciousness is when we are doing it. I would like to share a little story, and this is a story from ancient India to illustrate this point. I think a lot of you know there was a great king in ancient India by the name of Janak. King Janak was not only a great emperor, he was also a self-realized master who had perfected the art of right activity. He was in the world performing his kingly duties, but he was not of the world. In fact, Guruji named the second president, his most advanced disciple during his lifetime, Rajarshi Janakanand, after King Janak. Rajarshi means royal, illumined sage. It's based on the two Sanskrit roots. Raja means royal, and Rishi means illumined sage, Rajarshi. So Rajarshi Janakananda, because Rajarshi Janakananda was a successful businessman who had also achieved spiritual illumination. He was in the world but not of it, like King Janak. So anyway, coming back to the story, during King Janak's lifetime, there was a wandering sadhu, a sannyasi who was, like a nomad going from place to place. And he had heard a lot about King Janak, that how great he was, what a great spiritual master he was. So he said, I need to go to the court and observe him in action to see what is so wonderful about him. So he got access to the king's court, and King Janak was administering his various God-given duties on that day, and the sadhu stood on the side and observed him. And after some time, he thought to himself, King Janak is like any other ordinary worldly king. He is involved in so many worldly affairs, and I don't see anything really special about this man. And so as he was mentally criticizing, little did he know that King Janak was omniscient, right? He could read the sadhu's thoughts effortlessly. So he summoned the sadhu to his side, and he said, Dear sadhu, you are wearing the garb of a renunciant, of a sannyasi, but you have this deeply ingrained bad quality of fault-finding. By wearing that dress, you are misleading society. I am giving you capital punishment. You're going to be hanged in a week's time. The sadhu could not believe his ears, And despite his loud protests, the guards just dragged him away and put him under house arrest. And he said, in a week's time, you will be hanged. Now, of course, the sadhu spent sleepless nights. And to make his life even more miserable, the king ordered the cooks to serve him food without salt and nice, tasty desserts mixed with hot chilies. The sadhu was just gulping down the food. In a few days, he became pale and thin and weak, and he was so anxious. On the 7th day, King Janak called him for the hanging. And when he came, he offered him a glass of milk loaded with salt. And he asked him to drink it. The sadhu drank the milk, gulped it down. He had no idea how terrible the milk tasted. And King Janak said, My dear sadhu, how was the milk? And how was all the food that we were cooking for you over the last week? And the sadhu folded his hands. He said, Lord Janak, I could not taste the food. I could not taste the milk you just gave me because my mind has only been on the gallows. I have been thinking of the news and seeing myself hang night and day for the last 1 week. And King Janak, in a friendly way, put his arms around the sadhu's shoulder and he said, my dear sadhu, just like your mind has been on the gallows, my mind is on the lotus feet of the Lord, no matter what I am doing. Even though I'm performing all these God-given activities, I'm doing everything for Him alone and with Him alone. Do you understand the state of my consciousness? And the sadhu obviously was very inspired to hear these words. And he was very relieved that he was not going to be hanged after all. And he became a lifelong disciple of King Janak. The point is this: no matter what we may be doing, every now and then, we always have the opportunity to take our mind within for just a brief moment and say to ourselves, I do this for God and for Guru. I do this for God and Guru. That is the way Guruji has taught us to spiritualize our activity, to bring God into even the most mundane duties we may be performing. So that was 2B, act rightly to please God and to benefit His children. 2C, be humble, knowing that it is God who is acting through us. Before his physical passing, our Guru Paramahansa Yogananda delegated a vast array of heavy responsibility to our former beloved President, Sri Daya Mata. When she recognized what load of work that she was going to be carrying, she asked him, Master, how am I going to carry all of this activity and keep my mind on God? And he gave her 2 principles. He said, always think and say, Lord, thou art the doer, not I. And 2, thy will be done, not mine. When we live by those 2 principles, we realize that we are just playing our little parts in this cosmic show of God. We are merely actors on this cosmic stage of life. See, all our talents and abilities are gifts that we have borrowed from God. Ego or pride disconnects us from that infinite source, which is how most of the world lives, we know that. Humility, on the other hand, keeps us ever connected with that infinite source of divine wisdom, inspiration, creativity. Guruji said, use your intelligence and talents in the pursuit of success, but do not cut yourself off from the source of all power by egotistically ignoring God. Concentrate well on the duties you are performing, but always in the background of your mind, hum a silent devotional song of love to your beloved Heavenly Father, remembering that all your abilities are gifts from Him. So we go to the last point, last guiding principle that Guruji has given for developing initiative, and this is to have untiring zeal, determination, and self-belief. And these qualities of resilience were amply demonstrated in the life story of Maji that I shared with you at the beginning of this class. I mean, he persevered for 22 years with untiring determination, self-belief, zeal, disregarding the negative opinion of his villagers. And you can imagine, I didn't even go into the obstacles and the challenges he faced during those 22 years. It wasn't smooth sailing. He had all kinds of problems, but he didn't give up. A press reporter once asked Maji, share some words of inspiration and wisdom with us. And he was a very simple man. He said, no, I don't have anything to share. And the press reporter kept asking him the same question. And eventually Maji said, don't sit back depending on God. Who knows, God may be depending on you. Friends, oftentimes we are afraid to take the first step towards whatever goal we have set for ourselves. We feel that we may fail. We are afraid of failure, or we feel that we don't have the strength or the skills to accomplish that goal. Remember what Sri Yukteswarji, our Guru's Guru, said, look fear in the face and it will cease to trouble you. There have been many instances in my own life where I have avoided doing something good because it was going to be difficult to do. But there have been some times when I took that courageous first step and asked for God's guidance and help. And I soon found that the thing that I feared evaporated. The monster that I was creating in my own mind had no teeth. The monster had no teeth. So take the first step, and the path will open by itself with the grace of God. You know, one of the greatest examples of these qualities of resilience we spoke about is our own Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda. Guruji was given an enormous mission by God and the line of liberated masters to bring these teachings to the West and to the world. And we know he faced enormous challenges, tremendous obstacles. He was betrayed by people he trusted multiple times. He lost everything financially 3 times, had to start from scratch. Sometimes God tests these great masters so that all of us can have an example of how to deal with similar challenges in our own lives. Thankfully, Guruji did not give up and go back to India. Imagine what we would be doing today if he had not completed his mission. The essential qualities Guruji talks about in this theme of resilience is have untiring zeal, never mind past errors, have unflinching determination to succeed, be prepared to withstand the negative, critical opinion of the world, swallow up difficulties, believing in your heart that you are right, and do small things in an extraordinary way. I would like to read to you this poem called Do It Anyway, which is often attributed to Mother Teresa of Calcutta, although it was first written by Dr. Keith Kent, an American writer, as a set of paradoxical statements. But the poem became popular or became famous when it was discovered outside Mother Teresa's home for children in Calcutta. I'm sure many of you are quite familiar with this. I'm going to read it to you. It's very inspiring. It goes like this. People are often unreasonable, illogical, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you do good, people may accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Do good anyway. If you are successful, you will win some false friends and some true enemies. Succeed anyway. Honesty and frankness make you vulnerable. Be honest and frank anyway. What you spend years building, someone could destroy overnight. Build anyway. If you find serenity and happiness, there may be jealousy. Be happy anyway. The good you do today, people will often forget tomorrow. Do good anyway. Give the world the best you have, and it may never be enough. Give the world the best you have got anyway. You see, in the final analysis, it is between you and God. It was never between you and them anyway. You know, Guruji says, it is not success itself which should be the goal, but the kind of living which brings success. Isn't that beautiful? Now, as sadhaks, as spiritual aspirants, we know that the greatest initiative that we have embarked upon is the quest for self-realization. That is why each one of us is here for this week-long convocation, because we want to make progress toward that goal of attaining oneness with God. And all the principles we have talked about today can and should be applied to this inner quest of self-realization. You know, Guruji gives us a yardstick of success in God's eyes. And this is one of my favorite quotes that I keep going back to when I lose my way, so to speak, in benchmarking how I am doing in my spiritual life or life in general. So here is Guruji's definition of success in God's eyes. He said, if when you realize that life is a joyous battle of duty and at the same time a passing dream, and when you are filled with the joy of making others happy by giving them kindness and peace, in God's eyes, your life is a success. So simple. We get caught up in all of these outer accomplishments. Yes, they are important. We have to live and we have to use our God-given abilities. But at the end of the day, it is about giving joy to others by giving them kindness and peace. And realizing that life is a joyous battle of duty and at the same time, only a passing dream. How to keep that dichotomy in our minds as we perform our God-given duties. So to summarize the main points for developing initiative, the first was by wisdom, by right training, and by practice of self-realization teachings. Second was asking for God's guidance and inspiration by first contacting God in meditation, by doing everything to please Him and to benefit His children, and by being humble, knowing that it is God who is acting through us. And lastly, by developing the qualities of resilience, self-belief, unflinching determination, and zeal. And we also discussed that in applying these principles in our outer accomplishments, we can and should apply them in our quest for self-realization. So in closing, I would like to read to you these powerful words of Guruji. Please close your eyes and listen with concentration to these words. Guruji said, "You have superior powers and precious talents lying dormant within your being. Is your life under your control, or have you permitted it to become warped by forces seemingly stronger than your own? You may possess burning fires of ambition as yet unrealized. Do not forsake those goals. Do not sink into the rut of mediocrity. Rise above the crowd. Step out of the choking monotony of ordinary existence into a finer, more colorful life of achievement and ever-new peace." Now we will have a short guided meditation and practice an affirmation together. So let us sit in the correct meditation posture with the spine erect, shoulders back, abdomen tucked in, chin parallel to the floor, hands resting with the palms upturned at the junction of the thighs and the abdomen. Eyes gently closed or half closed with the gaze in a relaxed but concentrated way, focused at the point between the eyebrows, the seat of willpower and spiritual consciousness in the body. Keep the body relaxed. We'll practice Guruji's preliminary breathing exercise to relax the body and mind. So we will inhale deeply, fill the lungs, tense the entire body, and then relax at the double exhalation. So let's do this together. Inhale deeply, tense, and relax. Inhale, tense, and relax. Inhale, tense. Now relax the body, let go of any locked tension and energy in any part of the body, consciously relax it, the shoulders, the neck. Now let's do Guruji's 20-20-20 breathing exercise. We will inhale to a certain count, hold to the same count, and exhale to the same count, and I'll let each one of us do it at our own pace. So please start the 20-20-20. Now exhale the breath once. And as the breath comes in, practice the Hong Sau technique. I think most of you know it, but if you don't know the technique, just keep your eyes focused at the point between the eyebrows and talk to the Spirit, talk to God in the language of your heart. But for those of us who know the Hong Sau technique, let's just practice it for a couple of minutes. Now exhale the breath. Inhale. Exhale. Now forget the breath. We're going to practice an affirmation, but before we do that, I want you to think of an initiative that you want to accomplish, that you want to embark on. It could be finding a new job or starting a new venture, or it could be something internal, like overcoming a bad habit or developing a spiritual new habit or a spiritual quality that you want to work on. So just take a moment to think of that, what that is for you personally. And then visualize success. What would success look like for you? Visualize it very clearly in your mind's eye. Now, keeping that picture of success in your mind, please repeat this affirmation after me. I possess the creative power of spirit. The infinite intelligence will guide me and solve every problem. I possess the creative power of spirit. The infinite intelligence will guide me and solve every problem. I possess the creative power of spirit. The infinite intelligence will guide me and solve every problem. I possess the creative power of spirit. The infinite intelligence will guide me and solve every problem. I possess the creative power of spirit. The infinite intelligence will guide me and solve every problem. I possess the creative power of spirit. The infinite intelligence will guide me and solve every problem. I possess the creative power of spirit. The infinite intelligence will guide me and solve every problem. I possess the creative power of spirit. The infinite intelligence will guide me and solve every problem. I possess the creative power of spirit. The infinite intelligence will guide me and solve every problem. I possess the creative power of spirit. The infinite intelligence will guide me and solve every problem. I possess the creative power of spirit. The infinite intelligence will guide me and solve every problem. I possess the creative power of spirit. The infinite intelligence will guide me and solve every problem. I possess the creative power of spirit. The infinite intelligence will guide me and solve every problem. Om. Peace. Amen. Jai Guru, and have a blessed convocation.